There are some records from around 1400 stating that the village of East Tilbury was fortified with ramparts and towers as a defence against French pirates. But the first real details of fortifications are the blockhouses built in 1539 by Henry VIII at Coalhouse Fort. These were brick and stone towers armed with cannon and manned by a dozen men. They were coupled with those on the Kent side of the river to stop ships of the European powers led by Spain from reaching London. Although they were reused in the Armada years of 1588, they fell into decay, and by 1700 the Coalhouse Fort blockhouse had been swallowed by the Thames coastal erosion. After the threat of the Armada had subsided, the next threat came from the French Revolution. The government decided that the river should be defended by a forward battery built at East Tilbury. It was an earth battery armed with 4 32-pounder cannon and surrounded by a ditch. This was known as Hope Point Battery and was finished in 1799. In the years to follow, the ramparts were made higher and rearmed, but after the Battle of Waterloo the battery was abandoned. The French wanted revenge for Waterloo, so the government once again incorporated the fortifications at Coalhouse and constructed the East Tilbury Battery. This was finished in 1855 and had 17 32-pounder guns. Then, in 1859, just 4 years later, Napoleon III frightened the government so much that they decided to dismantle the East Tilbury Battery, and Coalhouse Fort, as we know it today, was started. Captain Silborne of the Royal Engineers designed the fort, but sometime after the fort was started, his commander, a Lieutenant Colonel Gordon, that's the Gordon from Khartoum, put in an appearance, but he left before the fort was finished in 1874, by which time it had already been made obsolete by the East Tilbury battery of breech-loading guns north of the fort. In 1907 the casemated battery had been dismounted and by 1914 had been concentrated downriver, leaving the fort with smaller quick-firing guns on the roof, complete with searchlights. In 1940 it was rearmed with 5.5-inch guns from HMS Hood, plus anti-aircraft Bofors guns, but its main purpose was to check that passing ships were degoused as a defence against magnetic mines. In 1949 the Admiralty let the fort to the Barter Shoe Company as a storage warehouse, and in 1962 Thurrock Council bought it from the Ministry of Defence, and it became a recreational park. Today there is a regular bus service, one going to Grays and one going to Malvern by way of Stamford-le-Hope every hour. The footpath from the notice board winds in a serpentine way up a gradual gradient to the top of the hill, where a panoramic view can be seen across the Hope to Shellhaven and Fopping Creek. The square white building is a water cooler for the power station that now stands on part of the site previously occupied by the Shell oil refinery. Even though the river doesn't seem to be moving very fast, the traffic on it does, and any photographer has to be on their toes if they wish to capture some special pictures before the subject has gone away.
In the morning, oh. tried to wake him, take him and shake him and tried to wake him early in the morning. Hooray, up she rises, hooray, up she rises, hooray, up she rises.
This particular tall ship is the Stavros S. Niarchos, and it's bound for London from Newcastle. It's part of the Tall Ship Youth Trust. The Stavros was quickly followed up the river by this tug and its 6 barges, throwing up white water as it battled against the prevailing wind.
Sails by her sets and the hatches full, all across the plains of Mexico, and it's heave her up and away we'll go, away Santiano. Heave her up and away we'll go, all across the plains of Mexico. In Mexico I long to be, heave away Santiano. Oh, with a tight-waisted girl all on each knee, all across the plains of Mexico, and it's heave her up and away we'll go, away Santiano. Heave her up and away we'll go, all across the plains of Mexico. Them Spanish girls I do adore, heave away Santiano.
At the top of the hill, on this road that leads away from the fort, stands the church of St. Catherine's. In the south wall of the unfinished tower is this stone. It says this tower and stone commemorates the lives of the men of Coalhouse Fort who died in the Great War of 1914-18. St. Catherine is the patron saint of philosophers, preachers, unmarried women, wheelwrights, nurses, potters, spinners, millers, librarians, rope makers, schoolgirls, universities and secretaries. The original chapel of St. Ced, or Chad, was built around 650 AD and was probably built below the present high tide line here in Great Tilbury, as East Tilbury used to be known all those years ago. At the west end of the church is the outline of a tower arch, and the buttress to one side of it is actually the remnants of part of the tower wall. It has been said that the Dutch knocked down the original tower, but the church was in such a state of disrepair that it just fell down without help from the Dutch at all. There are indications of alterations from most of the centuries starting from the 12th. The single bell is all that is left from the original 3 bells and was cast in 1629. In the west end of the nave hangs a spiked farm wheel from a tumbrel, representing the wheel that St. Catherine was tied to when Alexandrian tried to break her for converting his wife, slaves and soldiers to Christianity. Tilbury Power Station A was commissioned in 1956 and Station B in 1968. They contain 4 generators between them and the combined output is 1,428 megawatts, or enough power for 1.4 million people, or 80% of Essex. Cooling water comes from the Thames and the fuel is delivered by boat. This is a view across the river to Kent. Look, there goes the high-speed train.